Lawmakers have mixed reaction to the strikes and Maduro's capture. U.S. Senator Patty Murray posted this statement saying, quote, "If this escalates into a prolonged conflict, the American people do not want to be dragged into another costly foreign war with no real justification." She went on to call the strikes outrageous and an affront to American taxpayers. On the other hand, U.S. Representative Michael Baumgartner said the strikes would, quote, "bring Venezuelan oil back online," adding that would be positive for the global economy. And that brings us to U.S. Representative Adam Smith, who serves Washington's 9th Congressional District, and he's joining us live right here tonight. Representative Smith, of course, we want to thank you so much for your time tonight to be here.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
I want to start with this. What are you hearing from your constituents in Washington about these strikes, and how are their concerns shaping your position on what took place?
No, well, to be honest, most of them are not focused directly on this issue. They're more focused on the cost of housing, jobs, the economy, a whole host of issues. But to the extent that they are, they're concerned about it. What does this mean? I mean, President Trump ran in part saying we were going to stop foreign military entanglements, the forever wars that got launched after 9/11. And here we are doing regime change in another country with no clear plan for what comes next. So I think people are concerned about the policy outcome, and they're also concerned that the president seems to be doing this without proper legal authority. It is another example of President Trump concentrating power in his hands at the expense of the rule of law and the Constitution.
And taking those concerns, how has that shaped your position? What is your reaction to what took place earlier today?
I'm deeply concerned about it for several reasons. One, I don't see how it advances U.S. interests. Supposedly, this is about the drug trade, but Venezuela was never central to that drug trade. Certainly, the elimination of Maduro from the presidency in Venezuela isn't going to change what the cartels do in any significant way. So it's not going to impact drug policy. We have once again done regime change, contrary to international law. And again, what comes next? And that's the crucial question. The president somewhat flippantly said this morning that we're going to be running Venezuela. Nobody, including President Trump, knows what that means or has any plan for doing it. So that's my biggest concern is what happens from here?
Well, in your opinion, what do you think the strategic objective of these strikes in Venezuela is in your terms?
Well, I think it's clear that for President Trump, it's a couple things. One, it's about power. He wants to reassert the Monroe Doctrine that the U.S. has the right to dominate the Western Hemisphere, irrespective of sovereignty. I think that undermines U.S. interests. Having international rules of law, having respect for sovereignty protects all of us. President Trump has decided to detonate that. Keep in mind, he's also been threatening Greenland and Cuba and Panama and even talking about annexing Canada. So that's number one. I think that's the biggest drive, is just to concentrate power in President Trump's hands. And number two, he wants the oil. And he's been very clear about that, which is just atrocious to my mind, to think that the U.S. president would go after another country's resources. And what does this do for the U.S. exactly? We don't have a huge shortage of oil right now. It will certainly make money for oil companies if they're able to make this work, but that shouldn't be a reason for the U.S. to use the U.S. military to do regime change. But that seems to be it. He wants more power and he wants control of Venezuela's oil.
What specific oversight steps will Congress take in the coming days to make sure that this mission is accountable and transparent?
Well, that's another major problem. Republicans in charge of Congress have abdicated their responsibility to exercise oversight over this president again and again and again. Mike Johnson shut us down for 2 months. We weren't even in session while the president, did tariffs and used U.S. troops to enforce laws in cities and all manner of different other things outside, the folks of the law. So we need to exercise oversight. Now, I'm hearing that we will have hearings next week, classified briefings to find out what the point was behind the mission and where we go from here, but we need to do a lot more. I'm supporting a piece of legislation to block any appropriations going to further military action in Venezuela. I don't think the president has that authority, and I think Congress needs to step up and exercise its oversight responsibilities.